Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
This episode is brought to you by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, weightlifters, and even vegetarians get lower rates on health insurance. You know, if you listen to this podcast, you probably are healthier than your average person. So why should you pay the same amount as everyone else for health insurance? 56% of Health IQ customers can save between 4 and 33% on their life insurance. And Health IQ can do this because they use science and data to secure lower rates on life insurance for health-conscious people. It's an amazing service. And in fact, they are actually the fastest growing life insurance company with over $5 billion in coverage. So to check them out and to see if you qualify, go ahead and get your free quote today at healthiq.com/superhuman, or just mention the promo code superhuman when you talk to a Health IQ agent. This episode is brought to you by Organifi. You guys, one of the only things that every nutritional expert that we've had on the show seems to actually agree on is that we all need to eat more vegetables, eat more greens, eat organic, cut out all the processed junk. Well, who has the time, right? Who has the time to go out, do the shopping, make the salads, make the juices, make the smoothies? And that's what I love so much about Organifi. Their product is an all-organic green juice. It has all of the nutrients that you need. It tastes absolutely amazing, and it's made by wonderful people who I consider to be personal friends. And as listeners of this show, you guys can actually save 20% on your first order. And all you have to do is go to Organifi.com. That's ORGANIFI.com and use the coupon code SUPERHUMAN at checkout. Greetings, SuperFriends, and welcome to this week's episode, which is brought to you by me, because there are no reviews, unfortunately, for me to read this week. So I'm going to let you guys slide on this one, but if you haven't left a review, please do, because it certainly uplifts our entire team, which has recently grown. And there are a lot of people working very hard on this podcast to make it happen besides me, and they really love the reviews. So please take a moment, if you would, to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever reviews are left. On to today's episode, you guys. Today we are joined by Dr. Michael Greger. He is a New York Times bestselling author, a physician, an internationally recognized professional speaker, and, well, he's a really interesting dude, as you will find out. He has appeared on the Colbert Report, the Dr. Oz Show, and was an expert witness for Oprah Winfrey at the infamous meat defamation trial. Another interesting fun fact that I learned as I researched Dr. Greger is that he donates all the speaking fees and proceeds from his books and DVDs, which I just think is really amazing and worth noting. You've probably heard of some of his books, including How Not To Die and Carbophobia, The Scary Truth Behind America's Low-carb Craze. You can probably tell just from that title there that he and I disagreed about a few things. We also agreed about a lot of things. Which ones? Well, listen to find out. We talk about fruit. We talk about nutrition. We talk about legumes, which is an interesting topic. We talk about animal protein. And we get pretty nitty-gritty on how nutrition works and why there are so many different opinions about it. One side note I will say, Dr. Greger works on a treadmill desk, not a standing desk, but a treadmill desk. And I do apologize if you can hear it in the background. We tried to do our best to minimize it, but we talk about it in the episode. And so it kind of all works out. Without any further ado, guys, my new super friend, Dr. Michael Greger. Dr. Michael Greger, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing really, really well. And I think part of it is I've had really spectacular nutrition today. I've been really, really good. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about nutrition.
That's my favorite subject.
I figured it might be, considering I found you on nutritionfacts.org. You're a pretty transparent guy with regards to your interests. So, Dr. Greger, tell me a little bit about your path, your journey, how you came to become one of the leading experts in nutrition, and maybe also share with us, how your approach is a little bit different. That's a lot to unpack in one question, I realize, but we'll start with your journey.
Well, it really all started when I was a kid. I think the spark for many kids to want to become a doctor when they grow up is watching a grandparent get sick or even die. But for me, it was watching my grandma get better. I was just a kid when the doctor sent my grandma home in a wheelchair to die. She was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease. She already had so many bypass surgeries, basically run out of plumbing at some point. Confined in a wheelchair, crushing chest pain. Her life was over at age 65.
Oh, wow.
But then she heard, actually on 60 Minutes, she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers. And what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography. It talks about Frances Greger, my grandmother. They wheeled her in and she walked out. Within a few weeks, she was walking 10 miles a day thanks to a healthy diet. Though she was given her medical death sentence at age 65, she went on to live another 31 years till age 96. To continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. That's why I practice the type of medicine I do, lifestyle medicine. That's why I started nutritionfacts.org. That's why I wrote How Not to Die. That's why I do what I do. I just want to do for everyone's family what Pritikin did for my family.
What was ailing grandma?
Heart disease, end-stage heart disease.
Wow. And what was the course of treatment? That's a pretty incredible story.
Oh, it's a plant-based diet and lifestyle program, which was, which Pritikin really pioneered. But it wasn't until July 23rd, 1990 that, when Dr. Dean Ornish published his landmark lifestyle heart trial in The Lancet, one of our most prestigious medical journals, where it was proven that you could indeed reverse heart disease, open up arteries without drugs, without surgery. Just a plant-based diet and lifestyle program in this randomized controlled trial with something called quantitative angiography. And so there it was in black and white, effectively the cure to our number one killer. After that day, in summer 1990, no one else should have died from heart disease. Yet hundreds of thousands of people continue to die from this preventable, arrestable, reversible condition.
Wow. And when you say, by the way, I have to note, it's impressive that I realized you are on a treadmill desk while we're having this conversation.
Of course. It's time management.
I can hear it just a little bit. Maybe our audience will be able to hear it.
I'm trying to step softly.
That's totally fine. I think it's an interesting point that probably many people in the audience, pretty much everyone in the audience knows about standing desks because I use one and I talk about them.
Oh, great.
Many people probably do not realize you can have a treadmill desk.
Oh, my God. And you don't have to buy some fancy. I mean, you can go to any thrift store and you can always find, tons of old exercise equipment. And so you get some old treadmill and you slip it under some cheap plastic shelving and you put your laptop on top and poof, treadmill desk.
There you are. Now, do you have an external keyboard so that you can prevent the elbow? Of course. Yeah. Got to have that.
I have a little Bluetooth keyboard and, I have a monitor set up. And, I started out with the standing desk. I mean, realizing, looking at all this data showing prolonged sitting isn't good for us. So I did the standing desk. I'm like, well, look, if I'm standing, I might as well be walking, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. How many miles would you say you walk in a day?
I average 17 miles a day.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you're actually not at the desk that much, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. No. I mean, I try to take breaks every few hours, but yeah, I mean, and it's really slow. I'm going like 2.5 miles an hour. It's just, I just work all day. So it just kind of adds up.
Brilliant. So I want to switch back. You said plant-based diet. How plant-based are we talking? Are we talking vegetarian, pescatarian, vegan, paleo?
Oh, well, the best available balance of evidence suggests that the healthiest diet is one that minimizes the intake of meat, eggs, dairy, and processed junk and maximizes the intake of fruits, vegetables, legumes, which are beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, whole grains, nuts and seeds, mushrooms, herbs, and spices, basically real food that grows out of the ground. These are our healthiest choices. So the more we can center our diet around those foods, the better.
Absolutely. That's actually one of the advertisements for the show. I start out saying, the one thing that every nutrition expert agrees is that we all need to eat more vegetables. And it's true. We've heard everything. We've heard don't eat any animal products. We've heard only eat starches, but everyone agrees eat more stuff that comes out of the ground.
Right. There's this really remarkable consensus, right, in the nutrition literature going back decades. So, there's a lot of manufactured controversy within nutrition, but the science is pretty clear, has been pretty clear. And I think the public needs and deserves to know that there's this overwhelming global consensus regarding really the core elements of healthy living. And there's this great project started called the True Health Initiative, started by David Katz, head of the Yale Prevention Center, where he just, because of all these commercial interests trying to muddy the waters, he just pulled together hundreds of the top nutrition scientists in the world, like, the chair of, nutrition at Harvard, and you just put them on all to agree to a consensus statement as to what is the healthiest diet. Just cut through it all. Everyone can agree on this. So people can go check that out at, I believe, truehealthinitiative.org, I would guess.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to jump back again because you said two things that somewhat surprised me, not a huge amount. And I'll list them both and we can attack them one by one. One is lots of fruit. And I know a lot of folks in the nutrition community are now talking about minimizing sugar and about how fruit these days is so much sweeter than it was 5,000 years ago. So that's one factor. And then I was also surprised about the legumes because a lot of folks are also talking about the gut irritation around those two things.
Wow. Yeah. Well, so look, the Global Burden of Disease Study, which is the largest study of human risk factors in history, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, found that the number one dietary risk factor for death in the world, actually, on the planet Earth, like the worst thing about our diet, killing more people than anything else, what is it? Is it soda? Is it processed meat? No, inadequate fruit consumption. That was determined to be the number one killer. We're just not eating enough fruit. That's killing more people than anything else in a diet. Too much sodium, too much saturated fat, inadequate fruit consumption. That's because fruit can be effective in helping to, prevent a variety of diseases, not just, so everything from heart disease and, the hypertension, diabetes, all the kind of leading killers. The higher fruit consumption associated with the lower rates of morbidity and mortality. So it's just, and even the people that are absolutely like anti-sugar, think sugar is like the root of all evil, like Ludwig, doesn't say stop eating fruit. He says, oh, no, eat fruit. We're talking about added sugars. We're talking about industrialized sugars, table sugar, high fructose corn syrup. No one is seriously saying cut back on fruit. And anyone who is just hasn't read the literature, just doesn't know the science.
So sort that out for me, because I've read a little bit about this, and obviously, the sugar that comes with fruit is both different. It's fructose, and it comes with a hefty dose of fiber. Is that why we don't have to worry so much about that kind of sugar?
Yeah, no, it's not just the fiber, but the polyphenol. So yeah, you do a study. So I have a series of videos where I just, talk about all this experimental evidence. You put to the test. We're not just talking about observational studies like association studies that, fruit eaters tend to be protected. No, we got these interventional studies where you can prove the effects. You randomize people into different groups. And so I think the video, so one is called How Much Fruit is Too Much. And the other one is If Fructose is Bad, What About Fruit? I think that's the one. If people are interested in actually seeing it with their own eyes, and they have links so you can download the PDFs and actually read the studies in great detail. So basically, you do these kind of called glucose challenge tests, where you take people, give people a cup of sugar with a tablespoon. I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's a tablespoon of sugar. Mm-hmm. In a cup of water, you mix it up and you have people drink it. Of course, so that is a hugely unphysiological, through our millions of years of evolution, just drinking straight sugar water, that just almost doesn't happen, right? There's like honey, but it's hard to get at honey without getting stung. There's, just not much. Okay, so what happens is we get this huge exaggerated spike in our blood sugar. This is normal people, not people with diabetes, just regular people. You drink that much sugar, you get this big spike in your blood sugar. And then our body releases so much insulin to try to tamp down that spike that we actually overshoot, and you get this, and so our blood sugars come crashing down, and actually we become temporarily hypoglycemic. Our blood sugars actually drop below where we were before we drank the sugar water, so below fasting levels, because we had this over-exaggerated insulin response to all this sugar. And then once our blood sugars are actually below fasting, our body freaks out thinking, oh my God, we're in a famine or something, and shoots all this fat into the blood. You get this big spike in triglycerides. All sorts of bad things happen. That's why sugar is associated with all sorts of bad things like, fatty liver and high blood pressure and all sorts of bad things. Okay, so then let's repeat that experiment. But this time, in fact, let me get these. I should probably get these actually the exactly amount of sugar, right? So let's do that experiment again. But this time, let's add some pureed berries. So same amount of sugar. So you add sugar plus some basically like a berry smoothie thing, just some pureed berries. Okay, so basically you just added more sugar. So the sugar you had before, the table sugar plus the sugar that's in the berries, right? And so you say, well, wow, you'd have an even higher sugar spike. No, not only do you have a lower sugar spike, even adding more sugar, but in fruit form, but you don't get, it just goes up and down like it normally should. You don't get that exaggerated insulin reaction. You don't get that hypoglycemic reaction. You don't get the fat in your blood. You just what happens where you're supposed to happen. You say, well, wait a second, what is going on? How could you add more sugar and have less of a sugar response? So they think originally they thought it was fiber, where the fiber maybe kind of gels in your stomach, and so it just slows the rate at which sugar goes through in your intestine. But no, you could do this experiment with like Concord grape juice, like purple grape juice, which has no fiber at all. And you still don't get the same kind of spike you'd get just giving the amount of sugar in that same grape juice. And so they found out these polyphenols, these phytonutrients, these antioxidant phytonutrients that actually block the absorption of sugar at the intestinal lining. You can do this in a petri dish. Take an intestinal lining cell, and actually these polyphenols block in fruit, block the absorption of sugar. So it slows down the absorption of sugar throughout your small intestine. So a combination of the fiber plus the phytonutrients, allows us to absorb sugar the way our bodies were designed over millions of years to absorb sugar in fruit form, like all the great apes.
Wow. This is really, really interesting. So generally, I think people who try to be on either a ketogenic diet or a low-carb, reduced-carb diet try to shy away from the sweet fruits and eat, berries instead of bananas, tomatoes instead of mangoes. You're saying, don't worry about it. Eat as much fruit as you want.
Oh, well, look, I'm all in favor of berries over bananas. I'm not saying bananas are bad for you, but foods aren't good or bad as much as they are better or worse. And so, you look, food is a zero-sum game. By putting something in our mouth, we are, by definition, not putting something else in our mouth. And so are bananas good for you or bad for you? Well, compared to berries, no. It's better to put berries on your oatmeal than bananas on your oatmeal. But, bananas are better than most of the stuff that, people eat in their daily diet.
Better than Twinkies.
Better than Twinkies. But look, Twinkies are better than lard. Twinkies are better than eating a tub of frosting.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Wow. Lard, I'm not sure, right? Because at least the lard isn't going to give you this huge insulin spike.
But what it'll do is it'll raise your LDL and set you up for the number one killer of men and women heart disease. Oh, okay. And so let me just back up to correct. So those experiments were done with 3 tablespoons of table sugar, where you get that big exaggerated spike. And then they added an additional tablespoon worth of sugar in berry form. So the 4 tablespoons equivalent actually had less of a spike than 3 tablespoons of straight sugar because you were giving it in fruit form. And the reason they gave 3 tablespoons of sugar is because they wanted to replicate a can of soda's worth of sugar.
Right. So we talked about the plant-based side of it. What's your take on animal protein, dairy, and all those other controversial topics?
Oh, well, frankly, it's just not very controversial. Again, are they good for you, bad for you? Well, it depends what you're eating instead, right? So are eggs good for you? Compared to the breakfast sausage next to it? Absolutely. Compared to oatmeal, not even close. Right? Is cheese good for you? Compared to bologna? Yes. Compared to peanut butter? No. It's just, it all depends on, what you're kind of trying to replace it with. But in general, we should, center our diets as much as possible around the healthiest of foods. And those are the whole plant foods, minimize our intake of processed junk and animal foods.
I like that. I like the approach of, and it's a new approach to me, I have to say, after interviewing pretty much half of your profession, if not more. It's a new approach to me to say, look, food is not inherently good or bad, but every single time you put something in your mouth, it's a choice, and you are, it's an opportunity cost, really. My MBA brain thinks of it as an opportunity cost. You could have had all these nutrients and all these minerals, but in this moment, you're just getting French fries, which are shit.
It's a lost opportunity to eat something healthier. Always. Every single bite is that way. And so that's why, I have this kind of daily dozen, where we're talking about all the things that I try to fit into my daily diet. These are the healthiest of healthy foods. And for people that are interested, you can get it as a free app on Apple and Android. It's called Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen. It just talks about, look, we should eat berries every day, the healthiest fruits, greens every day, the healthiest vegetables. I talk about a tablespoon of ground flax seeds a day, quarter teaspoon of turmeric, the best beverages, the best sweeteners, how much exercise to get, all that, basically just to inspire people to center their diet as much as possible around the healthiest of healthy foods.
I love that. I really, really love that. What are some of the other types of nutrition hacks, body hacks, health hacks that you implement? We've talked now about nutrition, which obviously is your wheelhouse, and we've talked about the treadmill desk. So I have a feeling that you have some other really good stuff.
Oh, well, so if you look at that global burden of disease study, that just looks at risk factors for death and disease, every country around the world, the number one killer of Americans is the American diet. So the number one cause of death and the number one cause of disability is what we eat, now bumping tobacco smoking to number two. Cigarettes now only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills hundreds of thousands more. But that doesn't mean, smoking doesn't kill 500,000 people every year. So what we put in our mouth is most important, cigarettes and food. And then beyond that, so something like physical inactivity usually falls around 5 or 6 in terms of importance, in terms of reducing mortality. But, it's critically important. Sleep's important, on down the list. But nothing comes close to food. Nothing comes close to diet in terms of, the effect it can have on our health. But the good news is, we have tremendous power over our health, destiny, and longevity. The vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a plant-based diet and other healthy lifestyle behaviors.
What would you say is the dream team of foods for you? Because, I feel like it's always something, right? And as a society, we love to get obsessed with something. And then eventually we realize if you eat too much kale, you're going to get too many heavy metals. And actually, acai is not really that healthy. And goji berries, well, there's this environmental challenge. So I'd love to ask, what's your dream team of foods? We talked about selecting. You always have a healthier choice. So what are the top 5 or 10 healthiest choices of things that you can put in your mouth, in your opinion?
Well, if you're only going to add 3 things to your diet, like if you were like, look, it's a new year, I'm not going to go crazy here, but if there's 3 things to add to your diet, it would be berries, healthiest fruits, dark green leafy vegetables, particularly cruciferous vegetables like kale and collards, the healthiest types of vegetables. And then third would be legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. Those are probably the 3 healthiest, most nutrient-dense foods. And then if there were 3 things you'd want to first remove from your diet, if you're going to cut things out from your diet, number 1, so it would be hydrogenated oils, trans fats, also processed meat, bacon, ham, hot dog, sausage, lunch meat, etc. Now considered a class 1 carcinogen, meaning that we know they cause cancer in people. And then 3, probably soda, liquid candy. That would probably be the 3 things I'd remove first.
Brilliant. No real surprises there. I remember when a lot of people, me being a paleo advocate, which I don't think we're that far in our opinions. The whole thing of paleo is eat what your ancestors ate, and they didn't eat processed crap. But a lot of people sent me that study when it came out. And like, well, processed meat is a class 1 carcinogen. I'm like, yep, totally. But steak is not a processed meat, and fresh fish that was caught that morning is not processed meat, and so on and so forth.
Right, though steak is a class 2, right? So it's a probable human carcinogen, though part of it may be, heterocyclic amines, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, some of the cooking that goes into it. But presumably that would have been a problem kind of a long time ago as well. One thing where we may differ, I love focusing on the Venn diagram of where we all agree. I think more emphasis has to be on look. Science is really clear. There's really, a consensus on healthy eating. But, if you wanted to kind of go through some things that we may disagree on, I think the legumes thing, you said something about the legumes, but just kind of maybe stop a little bit. So we talked about fruit, but, legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, maybe one of the most important dietary predictors of survival. Older people around the world, we're talking about an 8% reduction risk of premature death for every 1 ounce increase of daily intake. These are observational studies, but you can do interventional studies where you randomize people to, eat, an extra half cup or cup of legumes, and you can see, beneficial effects. So I agree with the American Institute of Cancer Research suggesting 3 servings of ideally legumes a day. So beans at every meal, as far as I'm concerned. I'm having kind of the best of both worlds in terms of, like, if you look at the federal government's My Plate, where they're like, half your plate's fruits and vegetables, and then, we got to split it. There's this so-called protein group, whereas legumes actually get special treatment. They're considered both protein and vegetable groups. So they're loaded with, protein, iron, zinc, what you'd expect from other protein sources like meat, but also contain nutrients concentrated in the vegetable kingdom, folate, fiber, potassium. So really best of both worlds with beans, all the while, of course, natural low saturated fat and sodium and free of cholesterol.
It's really funny that you say all this because I have a friend who is a vegetarian, vegan actually, and he always tells me, I always joke that he eats hummus every single day, chickpeas.
Smart.
And I tell him, I'm like, you got to eat something else. He's like, why? This is a superfood. And I'm like, I'm not sure that it is, but I can tell he listens to the show and I can tell that he's laughing right now in his car.
That's right. Right. Yes. He was right all along.
Awesome. So I know we're coming up on time here, Dr. Greger. I wanted to ask, how can people reach out to you and learn more about what you're doing?
So they can check out my website, nutritionfacts.org. It is a free, nonprofit, science-based public service providing kind of daily updates on the latest nutrition research via kind of bite-sized videos, more than, 2,000 videos at this point, nearly every aspect of healthy eating. New videos and articles every day on the latest in evidence-based nutrition. What a concept, nutritionfacts.org.
Brilliant. I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom and energy with us. I would love to ask, what for you would you say is the biggest takeaway from this episode that you hope people absorb?
Well, look, basically, if there's one thing you need to know, it's that there's only one diet ever been proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients. That's a plant-based diet. So, if that's all a plant-based diet could do, reverse the number one killer of men and women. Shouldn't that be the default diet until proven otherwise? And the fact that it can also be effective in preventing, arresting, or reversing other leading killers like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming.
Brilliant. Dr. Michael Greger, I want to thank you very much again for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting, and I hope you have a lovely walk the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year. Keep up the good work.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, that is all that we have for you guys today. I want to give a very special thank you to this episode's sponsor, Health IQ, the health insurance company that helps health-conscious people save on their life insurance using science and data to assess the fact that health-conscious people have lower risk and therefore should get lower rates. Remember, guys, to see if you qualify, go ahead and get your free quote today at healthiq.com/superhuman or mention the promo code superhuman when you talk to a Health IQ agent. I also want to remind you guys that if you were inspired by this episode, if you've been inspired by the idea of learning faster and remembering more and accelerating your capacity to learn, then I strongly encourage you guys to join me for a completely free 1-hour training seminar where we will go into speed reading and memory techniques that will allow you to do all of the above. To check that out, simply visit jle.vi/webinar. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.